Welcome to the Parents at Work podcast, a podcast for the modern parent working in the modern world. Join us as we interview leading experts in their fields to unveil the secrets working parents need to succeed at work.
My name is Tom Spiegel, and I welcome you to the Parents at Work podcast, which is a podcast for parents who want to excel at work even though they have children. Today, I'm very excited to welcome my first guest, Karla Miller, who writes for the Washington Post Magazine weekly At Work Advice column, where she answers questions on everything from coworker clashes to employee rights issues. In addition to writing her column, Karla works full-time at a local accounting firm and also volunteers as a wife and a mother of two. Well, thanks for joining us today, Karla.
Thanks so much for having me, Tom. I'm excited to be here.
Well, the first thing we're going to do is, since this is about parents at work, why don't you tell us about your parents at work story?
Well, my parents at work story actually starts before I technically became a parent. I was pregnant with my first child at the aforementioned accounting firm. I was about 6 weeks out, and I had planned to work right up until about a week or two before my due date, when I was going to take time off and spend time getting my house in order. Well, first lesson was that children don't give a happy hoot what your plans are. 6 weeks before my due date, woke up and discovered my water had broken. So that pretty much threw a wrench into all my plans. I had to rush to the hospital, spent the night, spent a day in labor, had an emergency C-section. The second lesson I got from that was that you really do need excellent coworkers and a supportive work environment to survive this experience. My coworkers stepped right in. They said, no problem. We got this. We'll take over projects you were working on. They shipped my laptop to me so I could get things closed out. And they said, don't give it another thought until you're ready to come back from maternity leave. So that was my introduction to becoming an employee parent.
Well, that's really, in some ways, a great story. Like you say, kids don't really care about your parent at work plan. That certainly played out for you. But a great example of how a workplace should operate for new parents.
Yeah, I have to say, my day job is really terrific about being supportive of working parents, at least in my experience within my local office and group. The partners I've worked for, they are parents. Even the ones who aren't parents understand the struggles parents go through, and they, we have a great deal of flexibility with regard to setting our own hours or telecommuting. They're very results focused. So as long as you are getting the work done and you are responsive, or you have somebody who can be responsive for you, they're not too concerned about whether you're putting in the FaceTime and counting the minutes on your time clock.
That's exceptional. Tell me now, how old are your children now?
Now they are 4 and 6.
Very good. So you're almost out of the at least the young child weeds. You're not doing diapers and all that anymore, right?
Exactly. We've moved past potty training, which is a huge milestone. The next milestone is when they can operate the TV remote by themselves. So you get a few extra minutes to sleep in on Saturday.
It's so true. My cousin decided he wasn't going to have any more children when his daughter learned how to toast her own Pop-Tart in the morning. So he did not have to get up and make her breakfast. He said, I'm never going back.
Once you've had that taste of freedom, it's over. But they are, they bring their own challenges. They don't require as much round-the-clock attention as infants, but, each stage brings its own challenges, and there's new things you have to take into consideration with regard to work. Whereas before you take them to daycare, now, they've got school. The older one's got school, public school, and comes home midday. How do you work around that? Do you pay for more after school care, or do you have a parent stay home with them? It's just more things that you have to juggle and take into consideration.
No, absolutely. Now, so you work for an accounting firm. What is your work like? Are you an accountant, or what kind of work do you do for the firm?
Oh, heavens no. I'm a writer and editor. I also do a bit of video production. So I'm totally on the publication side. And that's another key factor in the flexibility I have. I do the kind of work that I could do from a laptop at home, at a coffee shop, sitting outside of dance class, sitting in my car waiting for school pickup. I have a great deal of flexibility with the work itself. So, and I can do a lot of the work via email, just responding to questions or sending out comments and updates to people through email. And that goes for the column as well.
Yeah. Well, you just can't get away from your job. You went from your day job to doing more creative work for the Post. You're just an addict.
It's pretty much round the clock. I mean, and on one hand, I have this freedom, and on the other, it's really a struggle to set these boundaries between the day job and the side gig and the parenting gig, and then just sort of taking care of my basic bottom of the pyramid needs, like eating right and getting enough sleep and getting exercise.
No, absolutely. Even when you've got ideal circumstances, when my work is much the same, I mean, for many lawyers, as long as you've got a laptop or sometimes even a phone and Wi-Fi, you can within reason work anywhere. I've often wondered one of the reasons I got into this line of work is I don't know how parents that lack that flexibility, how they make it work. It really is I just don't know, because it's hard enough when you can within reason leave work when you need to take care of childcare needs, which, as you mentioned, don't often follow plan.
Right. And do you find sometimes you feel like you maybe put in more work than you would if you had a set number of hours and then you knock off at that time?
Yeah, no question.
It just sort of bleeds into everything. But that's also, that's the price of having a job with autonomy and freedom and flexibility. And you need freedom, you need flexibility, you need money, you need time, you need a support system, either family or a paid support system, just some combination of all these things in varying amounts. And, like you, I wonder, people who don't have that kind of freedom and flexibility, I mean, you make it work as a parent, but it's a real struggle, and everybody has a different solution and a different patchwork of solutions. And the best we can do is sort of support each other's, choices and help each other however we can.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, with the flexibility issue, you're right. It is almost this low level of constant stress because and this is, of course, not just with parents at work, but for a lot of modern day workers that, the beauty is you can work from anywhere, and the curse is you can work from anywhere. And this might be a good segue. You and I had kind of spoken briefly or corresponded briefly about, the viral video of that hapless interview on the BBC. I mean, the reason it went viral is because there are a lot of, and again, just have to say that we are lucky to have these problems, but nevertheless, I think there are a lot of professional parents who can recognize that in their own lives and that pain point.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That resonated so hard with me. Just the you have this veneer of a professional, and then the chaos just comes spilling in behind you. And if ever a child exemplified that attitude of I don't care what your plans are, it was his little daughter just kind of marching in behind him without a care in the world. And you can't help laughing, and you feel for the guy, and you feel for the family, and you know that they all live each other no matter what. You can tell he's just like, I just got to go with this. I can't I can't control this. This is my life. And I think we all get that, and we all understand.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Did you see the other video that went around, a little bit out of a spoof on that, but of the woman?
Oh yes, the parody with the mom encountering the same thing, but she picks up the baby, feeds her a bottle, people bringing her work as she's continuing to talk at the screen, and defusing a bomb.
Right, all unflappable while she's doing it.
I definitely identified with that, except for the unflappable part. I mean, exactly. I'm in a constant whirl, and I feel like the tension is the only thing holding me together sometimes.
That's a very good point. Well, I want to circle back in a minute to how you make it work at work or don't, and some of that you touched on. But let me ask you this, which is the point raised by that video, that there still is a something of a double standard that while more men are participating in childcare while working, I don't know the video directly got at this, but they are praised for that. Whereas women, it's sort of, this is supposed to how.
Right. This is just a day in the life. No, I thought that the parody video really did a good job of highlighting that. That sort of, it was a quote, I think, from Gloria Steinem, who said that we've accepted, or most of us have accepted, that women can do everything men can do, but we haven't quite accepted that men can do everything women can do. Now, obviously, that's a huge generalization, and there are, lots of dads out there doing the same things, and they just take it in their stride, and that's just how it is. And it's everybody's just going to have to get used to it. But there are some lingering, vestiges of moms feeling more of the stress and feeling more responsibility for taking on that, those all those other side tasks, being the default parent. Right.
No, absolutely. I see that in our own life with what's expected of my wife. And I think it's not, some of it is comes across as benign, but I will get credit for doing, not so much for my wife, although for my wife too. I will get credit from other people for, stepping up and helping to take care of the kids, whereas a woman necessarily wouldn't. And it's not that I think people are trying to have a double standard, but I think it's still when a man does it, it's like, you get an attaboy for doing it.
Get a cookie.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you, as a writer, and given the workplace advice column that you write, and I know you're not specifically all the time dealing with parent issues, although you've got a number of good columns on it that we'll put in the show notes. But what kind of things and I know you don't write about every scenario that comes across your desk. So do you get a sense of, what's your view as a professional and a writer who works in the work advice space? Like, what's going on? What do you see happening with parenting and the working world?
Well, the questions I've gotten, they tend to be either from parents who feel stressed and harried and judged, or feel like they're being overlooked for, career opportunities, versus their child-free colleagues who feel that, everything's sort of getting dumped on them. They're expected to carry the bulk of the work because the parents have to go and take care of their kids. I have been on both sides of that. I remember what it's like to be a young worker starting out and feeling like, I'm not married, I don't have a house and kids to look after, so my concerns sort of take a back seat to everybody else's, or like my concerns don't matter as much. And, there's that tension there, and feeling like it doesn't matter, and trying to say, hey, my life does matter. I'm going to school. I have personal issues. I have, parents and pets and friends to take care of. And I should be given, as much time and flexibility to deal with those things as my colleagues who have kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
I see both sides of it, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think that's right. I distinctly remember, before children, and we didn't have children. I was in my early 30s, so I had a fair amount of work experience before we had children. And, just fundamentally, not realizing it at the time until after I had kids, fundamentally misunderstanding the difficulty involved in working while you have children. I remember I was working as a clerk for a judge, and fantastic judge. But I was childless at the time, and I would get there early in the morning, like 7 o'clock. I'd be leaving my house, 5:30 at 6, and get a bunch of work done. And he'd come in, 9:30. And I remember thinking, well, when you get to be a judge, you can do that. You can kind of, set your own schedule. Well, he had 3 children at the time, 2 of them very young twins. And it wasn't until after I had my own kids that I'm like, wow, I'm impressed that he got to work at 9:30 as put together as he was.
Upright with pants on. Right.
Right. Ready, looking professional and ready to come to work. And, one of the things that I wish my younger, I understand the perspective. I understand a worker who doesn't have children, having a coworker who does have children. There are interruptions, and that's just, when you have children, that's just the way it is. And I can understand the sentiment that, hey, this is unfair. But what I wish my younger self had known is that most of these parents, not they don't love their children, but they would rather be at work uninterrupted. They don't want
Oh, yes.
They don't want it. It's no picnic to go home and take care of a sick kid or to have to, rush out the door because you're the one responsible for getting dinner on the table and you've already fed them spaghetti for 3 nights in a row and you got
or McDonald's.
Right.
In my case,
exactly.
I'll admit that the days when I have to commute downtown because I actually have to be on site at work, sometimes it's actually kind of a nice change of pace because I get up and I shower and I get dressed and I get myself ready, and it almost feels like an indulgence because I can say, look, I can't handle the kids. This is going to have to be on you because I got to get myself ready and out the door. I might drop them off at school and daycare, but for the most part, it's all about me. And when I get to work, I can just focus on work. So yeah, I absolutely feel that sense of relief sometimes when I have that uninterrupted time to focus on the job.
Yeah, no, I feel much the same. I joke that I go to work to relax, because I can check CNN and do things like go use the restroom uninterrupted, little luxuries like that I'm.
Or driving to work and you can listen to NPR or podcasts instead of the Moana soundtrack. Which I enjoy the Moana soundtrack, don't get me wrong, but there's only so many times I can sing You're Welcome.
Right. No, I know. I completely get it. And you don't have to have a perfect answer to this. I certainly don't. But how do you make it work? What are the tips or tricks or anything that you've learned to help you be successful as a parent with 2 high-powered jobs?
How do I make it work? That's a really good question, and it's one I ask myself all the time. What am I doing? How am I making this work? And it changes from day to day, depending on the age of the kids, what my work schedule is like, what the situation demands. But I try to come up with some general principles to just sort of keep me just this side of sane. One tip that I'd share is something I picked up just through observing other parents. Especially as a new parent, you feel that everything revolves around the kids and making everything work with the kids and your job, and you feel this need to explain yourself. You say, "Oh, I can't make that. I have, my kid has a doctor's appointment. I've got to get him checked out. He's been having these recurring ear infections." And that's not really, that level of detail isn't really necessary most of the time. I would say one big tip for parents to sort of help keep the balance and help keep a little more separation between your work and personal life is don't overshare when you have a conflict. I can't make a meeting that day. Oh, I have a conflict. I have an appointment that I can't move. Can we try this time instead? And some of it is a sense of maybe a sense of guilt or feeling that you have to justify your absence. But I find that the more you reveal about your personal situation, sometimes the more it invites maybe comparisons and resentment. From those colleagues who might say, "Oh, of course, it's the kids. It's always about the kids. I guess the kids are more important than this presentation." Whereas if you just don't share that level of detail, people say, "Oh, you have a conflict. Okay, well, we'll work something else out." And of course, this is all assuming that you are the kind of responsible employee who does try to, fit in all the obligations and is responsible and is reliable so that when you do have a conflict, your manager is more likely to understand.
Right. No, I think that's a good point. You don't need to feel guilty. And the fact, I think, without perhaps meaning to, and I have caught myself as you were talking, I'm like, wow, how many times have I done that? Talked about some responsibility I had with my family that precluded me from doing something when I should not have done that. Because I think it does communicate that perhaps like you need a special exception. But people are unavailable, for any number of reasons. Maybe you have and maybe it doesn't have to be. Maybe it's a conflicting work situation. Maybe it's something else. Maybe it's a doctor's appointment, and the person on the other side doesn't necessarily need to, nor do they want to know that. But you're right. There is this compulsion. I felt it before to say, sorry, I can't make that call because I have to go pick up my daughter or go, take somebody to the orthodontist or whatever it is. And that's not necessary. Just I can't make the meeting at that time. And other people will deal with it.
And and it depends too on how close you are with your colleagues. If it's going to be something, it's more long term. For example, my older daughter needed surgery, needed tonsils out, and I knew that this was going to be a long recovery period, and she was going to need sort of round the clock attention for some time. So I communicated that to my colleagues. I said, okay, this is how I'm going to make it work. I'm going to take some half days. These hours of the day, I'm not going to be responsive. These hours of the day, I will be online and able to talk with you. And, of course, I let them know about the situation because it was kind of a big deal. And they completely understood. They respected it. They sympathized. They actually sent a care package for my daughter to sort of cheer her up during her recovery. And we all made it work. But it was a combination of them being supportive and understanding, and me trying very hard not to take advantage of that sympathy.
Yeah, wow, that's you got some great colleagues. And I wonder again if this is an area where the rules are a little bit different for men than women. If a man can say to someone, I need to leave early because I got to, coach my son's soccer team, if they will not. Even if it's subconscious, if they will not be penalized in a way that a woman might be, because as you and I know, there is still a stereotype that, the woman with children is not as committed to her work as a man with children is.
Yeah, I mean, that's possible. And I think it's, as you say, it's probably subconscious, and it's based on the models that we see around us and the models that we grew up with. Sometimes it takes extra effort, especially, if you haven't been there, and even if you have been there, to try to remember what it was like, and to understand that even though you may have grown up with this model, or as a parent, you didn't experience this kind of pressure, things are changing and other people have different situations, and every family's different.
Absolutely. Let me ask you this. How did you get interested in workplace issues?
Well, just being in the workplace, there's just sort of fodder all around. Back in 2011, the Washington Post magazine put out an ad saying, I would like to have a contest to see who provides the best workplace advice. And I am an advice column junkie. I love writing. I did some problem solving in my day job. I later heard this from my colleagues that I was sort of the person that they would go to when they had a sticky situation, sticky political or interpersonal situation. They would come talk it through with me, and I didn't realize how much this happened, but apparently it was something that some of my work friends really came to rely on me for. So I had a good deal of curiosity about solving problems and looking at situations and trying to sort of put a narrative on it. Like when you're faced with a problem, if you can turn it into sort of a story or an object lesson, that helps you sort of get control of it. It gives you a box to put it in. It gives you some perspective. So that's the sort of thing I just sort of enjoyed doing anyway. And when I saw this ad for this contest, I had a 6-month-old baby at the time. When I showed it to my husband, said, "What do you think?" And he looks at me and he says, "Do it. Absolutely do it." So weekends I would spend entering this contest, writing pieces. Every week, we finalists had to answer a question. Readers would go online and vote for their favorite answers. And there was a panel of judges, Washington Post columnists and editors, and also some HR professionals, and Carolyn Hacks, by the way, would take a look at the answers as well. That was talk about starry-eyed. So it was a 4-week competition, different challenge every week, and after the last day, I got a call from the people running the contest, and they said, "We like yours the best. We'd like you to write these 4 columns for us." I said, okay. So I wrote 4 columns. They got a pretty good response. The editor of the magazine, Lynn Medford, said, "Well, would you be open to maybe writing 4 more for us?" I said, "Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to." And then she just forgot to fire me or something. I kept sending in columns, and they kept accepting them. And it's been 5 years, and it's just been the most amazing opportunity and so much fun. And I've learned so much from it. I'm happy to be here for as long as they'll have me.
Yeah, well, I think they're lucky to have you. I love your column, and I remember when, after I had started my firm and was doing a lot of writing and focusing on, of course, workplace issues, but also caregiver discrimination and pregnancy discrimination. A colleague of mine said, "Wow, if you can just get Karla to write about one of your, if you can get her." That's a true story. If you can get her column, man, you will. That's what you need to do. And I was like, you're right. That's absolutely right.
So is that like the Karla bump?
That's right. So whether you know or not, you've got some celebrity out there.
Wow. I mean, I guess I shouldn't be surprised. There are people who read the Washington Post magazine. I'm always, it always feels kind of like a local magazine to me. But no, I was happy to hear from you when you contacted me and read your book, loved it, thought this is a really good resource that I can tap into, your book on pregnancy discrimination. It wasn't just about pregnancy discrimination. It was about all kinds of discrimination and what, employees are entitled to and where they can turn when they feel like they're not getting a fair shake.
Yeah, well, there are a lot of, as you know, workplace issues are complicated generally, but if you add the law aspect over top of that, it becomes even more so. Well, let me ask you, given your line of work, do you have a perspective, and you may not as much because you hear, I think, mostly from employees, but what management concerns are, particularly about having workers with young children or with any kind of caregiving responsibilities? Do you get a sense of what their challenges are and what does and doesn't work? And you may not, but if you had a perspective, I
haven't heard as many complaints directly from managers, but I think I can sort of intuit based on what, coworkers have to say about each other. I mean, if you're a manager and you've got some workers who have kids and some workers who are child free, the challenge is finding the balance so that the work gets done, but you're still respecting individual workers' needs, like giving them the flexibility they need, but still, making sure that they're reliable and that they're doing what they need to do, and understanding the reality that with kids, the school calls and your kid is sick. What are you going to do? Or your kid is home from school, under a certain age. There's really nothing the parent can do except stay at home with them or bring them to work. So there's kind of hard limits there. Yeah. But at the same time, respect that, child-free workers have lives too, and they have responsibilities. They may be taking care of people. They may have their own health issues that they need to look after. Or they may have things like education. They're trying to get training, get ahead in their career. How do you respect those needs as well? So I understand the challenge for managers, and some managers maybe. One example, I remember reading a study saying that male managers who had a stay-at-home wife who took care of the kids had a harder time sort of understanding the struggles of, the moms who worked in their office and dads who worked in their office who were, heavily involved in their kids' upbringing. It was an adjustment for them because they said, well, I had this model. I have no trouble getting ahead in my career and focusing on my job. I don't understand why it's so hard for them.
Yeah.
It depends on that model that you've experienced yourself, and being able to sort of break out of that box of your experience to really listen to your workers' concerns.
Yeah, I think that's right. I wonder if it's a bit of a double-edged sword for management, because on the one hand, you're right. Unless you even if you have children, if you have not been the one who's been the primary caregiver for any particular amount of time and try to get work done, chances are you still may not get it. I recall after we had our first child, and Ann stayed home from maternity leave. Right? He was my child. I was there in the evenings for him, but it wasn't until she went back from maternity leave, and I had my first, extended time of having to, care for him and try to get work done that it just didn't hit home for me before. I remember I would get home in my suit when she was home from maternity leave, and I couldn't even get my tie off before she stuck that baby in my hands. And I remember at the time being like, come on, give me at least 10 minutes to get my suit off. Like I didn't say this to her, but really sort of my thinking was, you've been at home all day. I've been at work. And of course, that was just complete ignorance, right? Because as we've just discussed, being at home with a child full time, while it certainly is a blessing in some ways, it is extraordinarily difficult. You don't have a second to yourself. And it wasn't until I had to do it on my own that I got it. Like, as soon as another adult walks into your purview, you get a chance to go to the restroom or just sit down or just, have a moment of peace. Of course, you're going to stick that baby somewhere else. So you're right. If you've got a manager who has not experienced that, even though they have children because they have a full-time spouse at home, they may not have the perspective of what it's like to try to care for a child and work at the same time. I also wonder, if it isn't, damned if you do, damned if you don't, that if you have a manager who has done that he or she might be leery because they know how hard it is.
They might be, lean too far the other direction.
Yeah.
Right, at the expense of their child-free, employees.
Exactly. Or they might say, you know what, like, again, maybe it's subconscious, say, you know what, like, I'm not going to give that promotion to the new dad or the new mom, not because I think they aren't capable, but because I remember what it was like when I had young kids. Like, I could just barely keep it together. When that may not be true. It may not be true for the person you don't know what their situation is, and you've got to, of course, by law, presume that they won't be affected by their children. But I do wonder, it's a lot of cross currents there for managers when, drawing on their own perspectives about how a new child is going to affect a worker.
Well, I had actually a really interesting letter on this from a new mom who had, gone on maternity leave and come back, and her boss was extremely concerned about her being able to, balance her home and her work life. And he was so concerned that he sent a letter to her husband saying, look, I want to, did you consult on that one?
Yeah, I remember this one. We talked about that one. Yeah.
Yeah. He was so concerned about it that he wrote her husband and said, look, I want to make sure that your wife is, that this job isn't interfering with her home life and her home duties in any way, which, bless his heart, as we say in the South, but that was entirely inappropriate. It was the boss crossing the home life boundary, even though his employee had gone to great lengths to say, no, I'm fine. I have the support I need. I appreciate the flexibility, but I don't need any extraordinary, attention or accommodations to make this work.
Yeah, no, that was a fascinating story. And I remember you got a lot of reader response on that one, mostly from women who were like, what was he thinking doing that? But,
you don't want to be too hard on him because you're sure he meant well, but entirely inappropriate.
Right. And that is a tough spot for managers, that even paternalism like that, even though it is, I think in his example, it was too retro, but nevertheless, one could imagine a more appropriate paternalistic response to a parent with a young child at home. But that too can get you in trouble. You've got to assume as a manager that worker is going to be the exact same as when they before they had children. It can be tough water sometimes for managers.
That brings up another issue. Certainly there are workers who will take advantage of parental status to sort of slough off responsibilities or, sort of reach for accommodations that they don't actually need, using sort of their kids as an excuse. And I hate to say that because so many people make that assumption anyway, but I realize that there are workers in all kinds of situations who will abuse their situation to try to get a better deal. But as you said, you need to look at the worker and say, is this the same as this person was before? I mean, somebody who's going to use their kids as an excuse is also the same person who was probably calling in late or calling off saying, oh, my car broke down, or I have a cold, or, some situation came up. That they've always got something going on that's keeping them from performing their best.
Right, absolutely. Because if you had kids in order to so you could get some time away from work, well, then you're just
well,
you went to a lot of trouble when you could have had a more, if what you're doing is looking for a way to get out of work early, there are easier ways to do it. But
yeah, that's just borrowing trouble as far as I'm concerned. but yeah, I mean, you get a sense for the people who are responsible and really trying to do their best and trying to juggle their responsibilities and versus the ones who are, will just take any excuse. You get a sense for that, and you can deal with them appropriately. It's just that if the slackers have a protected status of some sort, you have to be extra careful and document and, make sure that you're not treating them differently.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, in the long run, as a manager, you will be, from a selfish perspective, you will be better off if you, the very least treat fairly the new parent or somebody with caregiving responsibilities, in order to keep them in the boat, because they're going to be very loyal to you. They are going to, like once you've got kids, you got to ratchet up the efficiency as much as possible to get stuff done. And you learn how to do it. I mean, you just learn how to, what did somebody say? If you want something done, ask a mother, maybe father too, because, you just figure out that you got to figure out how to move the ball, and they'll do that at work too. So I think I know I'm preaching to the choir here with you, but that it's really short-sighted, to railroad a parent or somebody with caregiver responsibilities out of the workplace, because they often are very good workers.
Or based on assumptions about, and I have a great story about that. When I had a change in managers between kids, and my first manager was a mom, a mom of four, and completely understood, all the ins and outs. And so I was not too concerned, but a little, like I wasn't sure. The next manager I had didn't have kids. But when I talked to her, she said, oh, I love having new moms because they get twice as much done in half the time. And I really appreciated that vote of confidence, but it's true. As you say, you learn to be more efficient. You learn to fill the spaces between the spaces. I get more, as a new mom, I got more done in 4 hours, or about the same amount of work done in 4 hours as I would normally stretch over an 8-hour day. Because when you don't have kids to get back to, you're like, I'll spend a little time on Facebook or do some online shopping, take a long lunch. When you're a parent and you know that you have to beat that daycare pickup cutoff time.
Or whenever that call is coming, right? Whenever that unexpected call is coming, you're like, I don't have any luxury because any moment now I could get a call from school. Your child needs stitches.
You get this laser focus and you just bear down and you get the stuff done faster than you ever thought possible.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. Well, before I go into my last question here about any tech tips or anything that you might have, if you have any, is there anything else that we haven't talked about you think that's important for managers or for new parents? Any perspectives that you've gotten both as a working mom and your other job as a writer about workplace issues?
Yeah, no, I'm sort of thinking it over. I mean, it comes back to, again, trying to understand that there's a broad spectrum of parenting and work situations. Try to take into account your employee parents as well as your child-free employees. If you're child-free, maybe sometimes working with parents can give you opportunities. When I first started at this accounting firm, when I first came on, someone was going out on maternity leave, and I ended up taking over a publication for her. And that was sort of my way of proving and establishing myself, because she was out of the picture and I took over the publication for a while until she came back from maternity leave. That gave me an opportunity that I might not otherwise have had to prove myself. And also, I would urge people to remember that this, most of this is temporary. People with newborns who come staggering in half awake, that's a temporary thing. It's only going to be a few years that it's like that. And even if somebody sort of steps back to do the mommy track or the daddy track, once their kids move out of that phase, they can ramp back up and pick up their career again and keep going. And it's really a very small piece out of a long career. So it doesn't have to permanently derail you or set you back.
Yeah, absolutely. It made me think about a story. I believe it was in the Post. This was a while back, and it was actually about age discrimination and what a devastating impact it can have. But they were profiling I don't remember if he was an attorney, but he was some kind of professional who had been laid off. And his point, which I thought was a good one, he's like, this is the worst time to lay me off, like for the company, because my kids are now out of the house. He's like, all I've got now is time to work. Like, this is the time to, time to keep me on. So I think to your point that, if there is a disruption in workplace performance, it will be temporary. Kids do have the nasty habit of growing up, and as much as we complain about when they're little, it is a short time, and even from our oldest now, he's not in any sense like pulling away, but he just doesn't need me as much as he used to. So it is a finite amount of time and particularly for workplaces where the workplace has invested many thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars in training that person. I mean, we see this in law firms all the time. Like, you're just letting that money walk out. I mean, just from a selfish perspective, of course, we should do the right thing and support people who have children and pregnant women. But just from a selfish perspective for the company, like, don't let that training walk out the door just because they're sleep deprived for a 6 months stretch of time.
Right. Take the long perspective. Look at the length of their career and what they're contributing overall, and try to be accommodating of that, as you would for somebody who needs to take a sabbatical for any other reason, for travel or for further training or for medical leave. It's really, if you want to build good relationships and have long-term employees with institutional knowledge, you need to sort of respect the length of their career and understand that a short setback is just that.
Yeah. There was an article I saw in to that point in Inc. magazine some months back now, which is a magazine for entrepreneurs. And there was a storied businessman who writes a column. I'm going to blank on his first name, but his last name is Brodsky. And, and his point was, don't look at pregnancy or as a negative. Look at it as, or any, his point also to yours was, there any number of reasons that your workplace can be disrupted by a worker having to take some time away. Pregnancy
Absolutely.
is one of them, but his point was, like, don't look at that as a negative. Look at that as a way to build a company culture, like it sounds like the one that you are in, Karla, that supports that kind of human need, because that's going to allow for a stronger workplace. So look at it as, the business should look at it as an opportunity to grow, rather than, oh, this is something we have to put up with.
And as an opportunity to provide openings to other people who maybe are looking to try something a little different, and maybe they can fill in for those needs and develop new skills. And it develops a sense of camaraderie when you're sort of looking after each other and taking care of each other's needs. There was another column I had where somebody was complaining because her colleague had gone on maternity leave, and so this reader had been taking on the new mom's work. And then when the new mom came back, there was not a word of thanks from either her or from the manager to this worker who had been doing all this stuff for her. And I said, well, give her a little time to readjust and get back in the swing of things. But then, maybe bring it up and say, hey, were there any problems with these things that I handled while you were out? it's sort of a reminder. And it was really on the new mom and the manager to say, hey, we recognize that you stepped up and you filled in, and we really appreciate it.
Yeah, sure. Because it is a lot of work. When you got somebody who's been a key player and they have to take time away for any reason, it is a strain on the rest of the workplace. Even if you do everything right as a company and everybody's cross-trained, the truth is there's just more work for some people to get done. So absolutely, management needs to recognize the folks who step in to fill in the gap and to give them opportunities to, take similar time away from work. Why not have a policy that gives people any number of reasons or abilities to take some kind of sabbatical, whether it's for childcare or because you want to take a trip to Europe, to give people that time away from work.
Absolutely.
Well, I want to thank you for joining us. I had two final questions for you. One is, are there any technological tips or tricks or anything that you use that have helped you as a parent, a working parent? And the last question is, what one piece of advice would you, knowing what you know now, would you give your pre-kid Karla before you had kids? What would you, if you could have gone back and told yourself one thing, what would it be?
Okay, well, let's start with the technology question. I don't know how technological this is, but lists are my lifeline. I make lists all the time. It used to be on sticky notes or on the back of my hand or whatever, but now I use this feature in my Outlook, the sort of notes feature. It's kind of like a virtual sticky note. And whenever I have intrusive thoughts, because inevitably when I'm working, I'll think of personal things that I need to take care of. And when I'm taking care of personal things, I think about work issues that crop up. So I have a list for work things and a list for personal things. And when these ideas pop into my head, I open up that note, I type it down on that list, and then it's out. It's recorded there, and I don't have to think about it any longer, and I can get back to focusing on the task at hand. So it's maybe not super high tech, but it's what works for me and sort of helps keep my frantic brain, corralled.
Let me ask you before you get the next question. Let me ask you: is this the list making, which I think is a really important skill to have, and it's not one that I am great at, but when I do make a list, it does make a difference. Is this something that you share with your family, that you use at your home too, or is this mostly for you personally to make sure all the trains are running on time?
This is just for me, and then sometimes I will delegate some things. I'll see something on the list, and I'll either ask my husband or I'll send him a note and say, hey, could you take care of this? Delegating and sort of spreading it around a little bit, because I realize there are too many things on this list. I'm not going to get to all of them. This needs to be done by a certain time. And, if he's free, he will take it. Got it.
All right. Well, what about the last question? The pre-kid Karla, what would you tell her?
Yeah, what I would have told pre-kid Karla, getting back to the delegation thing. Well, first of all, I had no idea what motherhood was going to do to me. When you have an emergency premature birth, the physical and emotional and mental toll it takes on you. I wish I had known and given myself space to accept that it was going to take time to bounce back from that. I really wanted to just bounce right back into work, and I needed to accept that while a lot of moms do bounce right back, my situation was such that I was not going to be one of them, that I needed to take my time and ease in. But the bigger lesson was to learn to ask for what I want, and only for what I want. To not take on responsibilities or duties that I felt I should be doing, just for whatever reason. I had sort of internalized that, I need to be responsible for this. I need to take on this, whether it's the midnight and 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. feedings. I needed to relinquish some of that and push harder for that, and not be afraid to ask my husband and say, not that I'm afraid of him, but to give up that sense of responsibility enough to say, I need you to take X number of feedings, and I will take Y number of feedings. Let's work this out. To sort of push for that and set firmer boundaries, to give myself a break, and to ensure that we're both sort of sharing in the duties, because he is an involved father and he cares very much, but there are times where I could have. He maybe felt that, oh, well, she's got it under control. She'll let me know if she needs anything.
Right. No, it's a great point. I remember after we had our first child, when Anne was home on maternity leave, maybe when she was going back, I remember, I won't quite say it was an argument, but we were having a discussion about, trying to get our mornings and trying to get out the door. And she asked me, in a moment, a rare moment of enlightenment, I think I asked her, what can I do to help? And it was a small thing, but one that I did not realize how complicated it was at the time, just because I had not been home on maternity leave and hadn't done it. It was putting the various attachments on the milk bottles together once they came out of the dishwasher. I mean, it took an engineering degree to figure some of that out. And it really was time consuming. And she said, if you can do that, that would be a big help. And I was happy to do it. Well, I won't say happy, but I was more than willing to do it. I just didn't know. Having not done it. And because she was taking on that mantle, it's just not something I picked up on. And once she said, this is what I need help with, and I started doing it, I'm like, well, of course you needed help with it. This is taking me 35 minutes to get all the bottle gear together and dried and put back in the cabinet.
It's so familiar. Yeah. And when you're in a rush to get out the door and you're trying to get bottles together for daycare or whatever, or for, sippy cups for lunches, and you're in a rush, that makes it 1,000 times more frustrating.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of work. And I think those are all great ones. I think probably in addition to some of those, although I think it is a little bit different for men than women, but I think what I would have told my pre-kid self was to enjoy it. I just remember, as I look back, I'm like, wow, I thought I was busy. But clearly I was filling up that time with other things, right? Because I'm like, well, what did I do when I didn't have to get home? I just can't remember. And I wish I could have told myself, you know what, join a softball team, knock off work at a normal time and go and have a nice leisurely dinner with your wife, all the things that it becomes, we just have precious little time for after you have children. I wish I had not filled my time with other busy stuff, which clearly was not important because I can't even remember what it was, except that I remember feeling busy before I had children.
Well, and those little things, in a way it's hard because the things that you take for granted that once you've had kids, you miss so much, like just a quiet evening out, having dinner, eating with both hands at a nice restaurant, and nothing is sticky, and nothing comes with chicken fingers. Little things like that, you would never anticipate how much you would miss it.
So true. Well, Karla, thank you so much for being my first guest on this podcast. And I look forward to more great articles from your At Work advice column. They are fantastic. And I will put some of the ones that you highlighted that are relevant to parents at work in the show notes for this podcast. And maybe we can get you back on again sometime.
I would love it. It's been a real pleasure, and I always enjoy when I'm able to contact you for legal help with these columns.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Parents at Work podcast. Are you interested in learning more about our show, our hosts, or today's guest? Do you have a comment or question you'd like to share with the Parents at Work community? Then contact us at www.spigellaw.com/podcast. We'll see you next time.